Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. From fresh produce to tender cuts of meat, Safeway proudly supports Colorado farms and local small businesses. You support local when you shop at Safeway or in the Safeway app.
Is winter finally here? You might see some snow outside your window today. Depending on what part of the state you're in, your commute could be slick. We could definitely use the moisture, but unfortunately, this winter blast will be short-lived. The National Weather Service says this weekend will be sunny and dry in Colorado. And along much of the Front Range, temperatures will be back in the 50s next week. I'm Bazi Kanai. Coming up, protests start in Colorado over the woman who was from here but killed by ICE agents in Minnesota. Also,
yo no lo creía, la verdad, yo decía mentira.
Disbelief, joy, and uncertainty, how Venezuelans with ties to Colorado are processing the U.S. intervention in their country and questioning their future. Plus, in Denver, it's time to giddy up. The National Western Stock Show is back. You'll hear what's new this year. And we remember Rambin Roy, a Colorado artist who turned the everyday stuff of life into beauty.
Whatever come look like, it's going to be nice, I figured.
It's Friday, January 9th. Here's the news in Colorado today. A protest is planned in Denver tonight over the killing of a woman by an ICE agent in Minneapolis earlier this week. Renee Nicole Good was originally from Colorado Springs, and a small crowd gathered there Wednesday as news of her connection to the city spread.
From Minnesota to the 719!
TV station KKTV covered the protest. Governor Jared Polis called Good's death tragic and deeply disturbing, and he called for a full investigation and accountability. And an update on a story we talked about earlier this week about a Colorado bill that Trump vetoed. The bill would help communities in the Arkansas Valley afford a new pipeline for clean drinking water. It would give them more time to finance it. But the vote to override the veto failed yesterday in the U.S. House.
I want to boldly remind my colleagues here today that this project broke ground during the first Trump administration in 2020.
Republican Representative Lauren Boebert tried to persuade the House that President Trump's veto of her bill ran counter to his own priorities.
But it also makes good on President Trump's commitment to rural communities, to Western water issues.
But that effort fell short. 35 Republicans in the House, including all 4 from Colorado, joined Democrats in voting to overturn the veto. Still, it wasn't enough to reach the 2/3 threshold needed. Congress may put limits on what President Trump can do in Venezuela. Yesterday, the Senate agreed to move forward with a war powers resolution to restrict his ability to carry out further military action in the country. 5 Republicans broke with their party, joining Democrats to put a check on the White House. As you know, this comes after the operation last weekend to capture Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. That has sparked mixed reactions, especially within Colorado's Venezuelan community. Arlo and other reporters in the CPR newsroom have been talking with some of them. Arlo, they told you their feelings about all of this are really complicated. Why is that?
Well, Bazi, they're happy that Maduro is gone. He was a dictator, after all. But there are concerns about what happens next in the country. Will the lives of ordinary people living in Venezuela actually improve? And then on top of that, Venezuelan immigrants here have been the target of Trump's immigration policies. They say the president has made it sound as though they are all criminals.
And our listeners will remember President Trump mentioned Colorado specifically and Venezuelan gang activity that he alleges is happening here as part of his justification for toppling Maduro.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of Venezuelans aren't quite sure how to feel about that.
Eso fue un momento de felicidad. Yo no lo creía, la verdad. Yo decía mentira.
I want to introduce you to Brian Eduardo Jacobo. He's from Venezuela and came to Colorado during the huge influx of migrants back in 2024. Brian is gay, and he faced discrimination in Venezuela. He applied for asylum when he crossed into the U.S., then lived and worked in Denver for about a year. But last year, he was detained during an immigration check-in and deported.
Me dolió mucho, literal. Porque no sé, yo no estaba acostumbrado.
Brian said that experience really hurt him. The way that he was treated by ICE was nothing like he'd ever experienced before. And when he asked officials why he was being deported, they didn't give him an answer. They just said, "You need to leave."
So he was deported back to Venezuela.
That's right, but he didn't stay there. He didn't feel safe. He's currently in Bogota in Colombia. And that's actually where he learned about Maduro's arrest. He was up all night watching the news about the situation.
Wow, yo digo, es verdad, o sea, es cierto.
And he couldn't believe that it was true.
So that's something Brian has been waiting for Maduro to be ousted. It's something to celebrate for him. But the country that did that is the one that just deported him and where he felt mistreated.
Yeah, and that's why he wanted to be very clear. He's not a Trump supporter.
Yo siendo sincero, yo no soy muy amante al presidente Trump, la verdad.
He doesn't trust the administration, but at the same time, he told me that he's grateful that Trump removed Maduro.
Sí, le agradezco un poco por lo que hizo por Nicolas Maduro.
For decades, Venezuelans like Brian have been asking the international community for help with, say, preserving free and fair elections. But the Trump administration has made it very clear that they did it for other reasons.
I don't think that we've seen any signals that Trump cares about democracy.
Francisco Rodriguez is a Venezuelan economist and a professor who studied the country's collapse for years.
He's talked about migration, he's talked about crime, he's talked about drugs, and he's talked about oil.
President Trump has indeed made clear that oil was an important part of his considerations, if not the very center of it all. And the new Venezuelan president did just agree to export billions of dollars worth of oil to the U.S. after being pressured by the White House.
Yeah, it might be about oil, but Brian and others I've talked to say they're okay with that. Brian said that he understands that Trump wouldn't only act out of the kindness of his heart.
Donald Trump no se iba a meter a Venezuela solamente por humildad.
He said that giving up oil might just be the cost of improving the lives of everyday Venezuelans. And I was actually a little bit surprised that Brian trusted the Trump administration to make good on that promise, even after everything that he's experienced.
Es como fe, que agarra el petróleo si lo quiere agarrar y
He told me that he had faith that Trump would take the oil, but leave Venezuelans to forge their own path.
So Brian is now back in South America. After all that he's been through, does he want to come back to the U.S., back to Colorado?
He does. Brian still has family members here in Colorado, but he says it's too risky, and his family is in legal limbo like so many other Venezuelan migrants here. Temporary protected status for Venezuelans has ended. Deportations are happening on a massive scale, and now the Trump administration claims Venezuela is a safe country to return to. That despite the Chavistas, Maduro's regime, still being in power and punishing dissent hard. But Brian told me that he has hope that things will get better.
es una fe, es una esperanza de que pues poco a
And that
poco
Venezuela will one day be a country he's able to go back to.
Thanks, Arlo, for sharing your reporting.
Thank you, Bazzi.
The cows are back in town. Longhorn cattle paraded through downtown Denver yesterday, along with cowboys, trick ropers, and a stagecoach. It might have been cold and wet out there, but at least this year's event went better than last year's when the bovine headliners got stuck in traffic on I-25 and missed all the fun. This was Greg Axemit's first time at the parade.
This is just really cool. I'm glad Denver does it. It's one of the things that makes Denver unique in America, and it's a very, very fun time.
And were you able to see the Longhorns?
Oh, yeah. Very cool. Very cool. We thought they were going to come flying down the street a lot faster, but we're glad they didn't. You know, it was safer this way.
Thursday's parade marked the kickoff of the 120th National Western Stock Show in Denver. It runs through January 25th. For many longtimers in the state, this is an annual tradition. But if you haven't stock showed before, or if you just want to know what's new this year, we have a guide for you, courtesy of Denverite's Paolo Shalcita. Howdy, Paolo.
Mighty fine to be here, Bozzy.
The stock show is not just a chance for us to speak cowboy. It also involves seeing hundreds of different events if you'd like. When you looked through the program this year, what stood out for you?
I mean, you can't go wrong with the rodeos, right? I had my eye on the Mexican Rodeo Extravaganza, which will feature Mexican-style bull riding, trick roping, and mariachi music. That's this weekend. If rodeos aren't quite your speed, there are all sorts of events that celebrate the American West. My wife and I are thinking of going to one of the extreme dog shows.
Nice.
And we're also thinking about going to a judging contest where judges evaluate the best livestock brought to the stock show. And of course, there's always the fun of roaming the grounds to shop or look at all the farm animals.
So much to see. People do need to buy tickets to get onto the grounds. And then for those special events like the rodeos you mentioned, those require their own tickets. Is that right?
That's right. And tickets are expected to go fast, so the stock show recommends buying them ASAP.
What's new for the stock show this year?
Well, the National Western Center, where the stock show takes place, will look a little different this year. They're debuting 2 new buildings on the campus. Those buildings include a new 5,000 square foot arena, an auction hall, and the new headquarters for the Western Stock Show Association. They'll be hosting a few events at each building this year. And I should note, we're still only partway through a giant glow-up this campus is getting. And it's not even close to being done. Denver City Council just approved an additional $812 million for the next phase of construction. That money will pay for a new equestrian center, a hotel, a parking garage, and more.
And while we're waiting for that new parking garage, for those going to the stock show, where should they park?
Well, parking next to the arena is probably going to fill up quickly, but luckily you've got a few options. First, there's a free shuttle between Coors Field and the National Western Center that leaves every 10 to 15 minutes. And if you're not up for driving, 2 RTD lines stop near the campus, and there's a bus stop nearby too.
Can't wait. Thanks, Paolo.
Much obliged.
You can find more information about how to stock show at denverite.com. Colorado artist Roy L. Smith experienced a lot of hardship in his lifetime, but he found freedom from that through creation, particularly by constructing intricate environments out of whatever materials he found.
I just get out there and start putting stuff together. And whatever come look like, it's going to be nice, I figured. I just got that in my heart that it's going to come out nice.
Smith, known to many as Rambin Roy, died last week in Saguache, Colorado. He was 79. Smith's obituary describes him as an artist, musician, hobo, cowboy, gold prospector, antiques dealer, and handyman. He was born in Gunnison, Mississippi, but didn't stay long.
Too much racism.
This is Smith from a 2018 interview. He told CPR he witnessed physical and verbal attacks against Black people in his hometown, so he left to see the world, eventually landing in the San Luis Valley, where he built an impressive art compound.
Why don't we just go this way and we'll come out that way?
Okay.
Fort Roy at Royville is the name of that compound. It's a maze-like structure that twists and turns upon itself as it rises from the alkaline flats of the valley. Garlands of aluminum cans wind around the wooden frame of this place, and swaths of shimmering tinsel drape from tall posts. He saw artistic potential in everyday objects, buttons, coins, small toys.
What immediately struck me is Roy's just effulgence. He is like the most generous and open person that is just constantly making friends.
Artist and curator Adrian Garbini met Smith in 2015, and they became close. Smith moved off his land and into the town of Saguache in recent years in order to tend to his health. In town, he built a new art environment, this one indoors. He named it Downtown Royville. And its main source of material came from a photographer who had begun to chronicle Smith's life and artwork.
Roy would then use those photographs to make collages and reinterpret them and kind of wallpaper his entire environment with them. The photographs would start to layer, and it would be photographs of photographs of photographs of Roy. So it was really kaleidoscopic and beautiful.
Garbini, who was working to preserve Smith's story, says he experienced a lot of hate and discrimination, and despite that, he chose a path of hope.
His message was one of love and of joy and celebration of art, and he really wanted to be remembered for his capacity to seek peace.
Rambin Roy, oh yeah, traveling round the world. They might be doing something negative in life and decide, hey, I want to do something nice, some art. Why be negative and hatred and mean? Go do some art. In my guitar, we're going home on my way.
Smith's funeral is tomorrow. The Range, an art center in Saguache, is now accepting cards from anyone wishing to share their condolences with Smith's family. Additional reporting for today's show came from CPR's Caitlin Kim, Sandy Batulga, Kevin Beatty, and Stephanie Wolf. Thanks for listening, and if you hear something you like on Colorado Today, be sure to share it. I'm Bazi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Their pharmacists are here to help you and your family stay protected, offering a wide range of vaccines, including flu shots and COVID-19 boosters. Stop into the store or schedule online at safeway.com/pharmacy. Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.